y la orquesta.
Our new student director, Mitch Lamb, is playing some games, some get-to-know-you activities with our middle schoolers over in our student area for all our 5th or 8th graders. This is kind of their first Sunday to really connect with him. And if you've seen Mitch up here, you kind of got to see him. He's a pretty tall guy. He's a big, strong guy. And so one of the games that they're playing this morning is Mitch versus the middle schoolers in tug of war. So we'll see how that goes. There's gonna be some video of that later on, and I got a feeling he might pull off the upset. I'm just saying. I don't know how many middle schoolers showed up today, but if there's under 20, I think he's got a good chance. Just saying. But it brought me back to thinking about this past week. Some of my favorite games. I was a student pastor here for a few years before I became the senior pastor, and had 10 plus years in student ministry. Next weekend, I get to go speak at a camp where I was a student, a volunteer, a leader. Took some students to. I got to speak to a bunch of high schoolers. So I'm just kind of in that student ministry mode this week. And so I was reminiscing on some of my favorite games that I got to lead or participate in within student ministry. And my favorite was this game called Honey, If You Love Me. And so maybe some of you know it, but the game goes like this. There's one person who's in the middle, and then there's a circle around them of students. And the person in the middle would go up to someone, and they would say, honey, if you love me, would you give me a smile? And so then that person would then have to respond to them, honey, I love you, but I just can't smile, without actually smiling or laughing or whatever it is. So usually the person who is in the middle would be very animated and dramatized and get up in the person's face and do all crazy things to try to make them laugh or try to make them smile. So it was always fun to watch, especially middle school boys, try to do this, and the girls trying not to laugh, pretending that they're disgusted, but they kind of like the attention just a little bit, and just going back and forth. It was so much fun to watch students do that. But the idea behind the whole game is it's just kind of silly. If I get you to smile, well, it shows that you love me or that you don't love me. Just one little feeling, one little emotion is what determines love between these two middle schoolers. It's just kind of a silly concept, but it's a ton of fun to play. Everyone laughs. But as I thought more about that game, what it reminds me of sometimes is how in our culture today, we tend to view love as just an emotion. I feel this way towards a certain person, or I don't feel this way towards a certain person. And if I have more feelings of love, then there's more love there. And if I have less feelings of love, there's less love towards that person. I mean, we could even take this a step further. We see, some of the most extravagant weddings that take place, and there's just everything that goes on in that. And there's love and emotion during that day, but a few years down the road, all of the emotion, all the feelings, they're not always there consistently, and all of a sudden those marriages don't always last. And so what I think we have to do today is that we have to understand that love isn't an emotion. It can have emotive feelings that come with it, but as we see through Scripture and how God has defined love, or rather how God has shown us what love is by who He is, we can realize that love is actually a choice. Love is about showing actions behind what may be in your heart. I don't want to dismiss or minimize the feelings that do come when you choose to love someone, but there are days where the feeling isn't always present, but the choice and the opportunity to love someone or even to love God is something that isn't based on just what we feel in that moment. It's about making daily choices, action steps to love Him or to love others. And we don't have to do this on our own. We can look to God and His Word and His Holy Spirit to show us how we can choose to love. And so this morning, if you're at a place where maybe you even came in this morning and you didn't feel this connection to God. You didn't feel these lovey feelings toward Jesus and all that he's done for us. And maybe you're just, I don't necessarily feel connected to him. I don't feel his love. Maybe you feel forgotten by him. Maybe you feel alone. Maybe you feel like others have forgotten about you. No matter what you're feeling today, we can look to God and his word and his spirit to help us see that love is a daily choice that we can make that can help us experience love to the full in our life. And so if that's what you're feeling today, we got a psalm for you, or rather, we got a psalm for you that we can put on repeat, that we can listen to over and over and over again and remind us of the truth about love and how God's love can compel us to love him as well as love others. And so our big idea for this morning, the one thing that we're going to see in our text today, and we're throwing up on the screen, is this, is that love is a choice that God chose first. Love is a choice that God chose first. Love is something that he initiated by creating us, and even in our broken state, sending us his son into the world, Jesus Christ, to live a perfect life, to die, and to rise again so that you and I could be in a life-giving, loving relationship with God right now and forevermore. See, love is a choice that God makes every day towards you, towards me, that you don't deserve and I don't deserve at all, and yet he freely does it. He chooses to love us. And there's years and years and stories of God's love on display that we're going to look at this morning. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Psalm chapter 136. Psalm chapter 136. This week and next week will be our last 2 weeks as we've been looking at different psalms throughout the summer. And in Psalm 136, if you're grabbing a Bible in the seat back in front of you, it's going to be on page 504. Feel free to open up the Bible app on your phone. There's also, at the end of service, if you don't have a physical hard copy of a Bible, we'd love to give you one. There are some Bibles on in some book stacks on the back walls. Feel free to grab one. It's a gift from our church to you. We'd love for you to have a physical copy of a Bible as you leave here today. The verses are also going to be up on the screen throughout our morning together. And as you're turning there, just want to remind you that here at Avenue, we're going to teach from God's Word, the Bible, every week, because we believe God has primarily spoken to us through his word. And not only do we believe the Bible, which is God's word, is true, but that it's very applicable to our lives today. So Psalm chapter 136. It's a psalm written by, we think, a musician within the kingdom of Israel, God's people, the people of Israel. And we don't exactly know who this person is, but there is an opportunity that he gives the reader or the listener, the one who is singing this psalm, it's an opportunity to choose to love God. And there's two specific choices that he implores us to make that will help us to choose to love God and to love others when the feelings aren't always there. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when the feelings and the connection and the presence is there in our relationship with God or there in our relationship with others. But when there's not, there's two choices that you and I can make consistently that will help us get to that place of choosing to love God and to love others. And in verses 1 through 3, we see this first choice is that we can choose to be thankful. We can choose to be thankful. So verses 1 through 3, it says this: "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. His love endures forever. And give thanks to the Lord of lords. His love endures forever." And so now you've probably seen the rest of this chapter, and it repeats it every single verse. His love endures forever. It's like a call and response type of song. I'm not going to make you do that this morning, but his love endures forever. But we see there the concept and the idea of, well, how do I know his love endures forever? Well, it's first by making a choice to be thankful for who God is and for what he has done. We see in these first 3 verses that he declares that the Lord is good, and then in verses 2 and 3 that he's the God of gods and he's the Lord of lords. So there's 2 different ideas of how we can be thankful. The first one is that we thank God for being good to us, that he has provided for us, that he has created us, that he is with us, that he never leaves us or forsakes us, even though sometimes it can feel that way. He hasn't. He consistently shows up. He is good. But not only that, he's in charge. He's the God of gods. He's the Lord of lords. It means he's first over all creation, that no one or no thing can compare to God. See, when we understand and know and feel goodness and someone who's in charge that's taking care of us and treating us in a good and kind way, we're able to be thankful to them. It's something that maybe we do a lot, during Thanksgiving. We sit around a table and we have food, and maybe there's family or friends, and it's an easier practice at that moment when everything's kind of in front of you, and you're able to go around the table and say, well, this is what I'm thankful for. This is what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for family, friends, provision, whatever it is. When we are able to see it, a lot of times it's easier to do that. But when we're not able to see it in our lives in that moment, we can still choose to be thankful because he is good and he's in control. But how do we know he's good and how he's in control? Well, it kind of leads us to these next verses 4 through 9. We can choose to be thankful because God is powerful. We can choose to be thankful because God is powerful. And look what the psalmist does here and what he writes about who God is and what he's done. Verse 4 says this: to him alone, who alone does great wonders, his love endures forever. Who by his understanding made the heavens, his love endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters, his love endures forever. Who made the great lights, his love endures forever. The sun to govern the day, his love endures forever. The moon and stars to govern the night, his love endures forever. He points back to the things in creation. He points back to the sun, the moon, the stars, and everything in this world. And he reflects on those things and says, wow, God, you're good. Wow, God, you're powerful and in control. And because you've given me breath for today, you've kept me alive for today, I can see your goodness and I can be thankful for it. I can see your love on display because of everything around me. I mean, maybe you've learned this growing up in school or whatever it is, but we learned that the way that the earth is created within the scope of the universe, how it's just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And if it was just spinning a little too fast or a little too slow, or if we were 1 degree off this way, 1 degree off this way, we would be spinning all over the universe and gravity wouldn't be working. It would be all over the place. It'd be mad chaos. But in the scope of the entire universe that God created, human life is able to exist because everything within the universe and everything within our world is created in a certain way that allows us to live. And then if we were 1 degree closer to the sun or 1 degree further away from the sun, we'd all fry or we'd freeze. And yet, we're living. And yes, we have humidity. I get it. Don't worry. My hair feels it all the time, so I understand that. But we're able to live on this earth, to breathe. That is a good and gracious gift from an almighty creator. And that's what the psalmist is doing here. He's saying we can be thankful because we're living. Because there's no shot in the craziness of everything in our world, known and unknown, that we should even be here. And yet God graciously has created us. But he's taken it a step further. He's not only created us, but he's put his image in us. It says in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 that God created humans in his own image, that we have this ability to connect with God spiritually that no other creature has the ability to connect to God with. We have an opportunity that even though this world is full of suffering and pain and evil, we know that by faith in Jesus and Jesus alone, we will be able to enjoy eternity in heaven someday where there's no more sickness, no more pain, no more suffering, but a perfect relationship with God through what Jesus did for us in his death and resurrection. I don't deserve that. I know that my sin separates me from God. I know that I'm selfish. I know that I fall short. I don't deserve that love and kindness to me. I don't deserve for him to be in control of everything and yet to think of me. I don't deserve that at all. And so when I begin to think of those things, or when you begin to think of those things in your life, and think about how powerful and mighty God is, well, it brings you to a place of gratitude. Brings you to a place of saying, thank you, God. And it reminds you, he does love me. He does care about me. His love for me does endure forever. So that's the first choice that we can make, to be thankful because God is powerful. The second choice we can make is this, is that we can choose to be faithful. We can choose to be faithful to God. Faithful as if we're gonna obey him. We're gonna serve him. We're gonna put his need or his desires for our lives first and foremost. And so this is what the author has to say here in verses 10 and following. It says this. He kind of switches gears a little bit. He says, to him who struck down the firstborn of Egypt, his love endures forever. And he brought Israel out from among them. His love endures forever. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, his love endures forever. To him who divided the Red Sea asunder, his love endures forever. And he brought Israel through the midst of it. His love endures forever. But swept Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea. His love endures forever. And to him who led his people through the wilderness, his love endures forever. Now, for some of you, you may have been tracking what was going on there, but for others, you're like, what is he talking about? Egypt and Israel and the Red Sea and Pharaoh and all those different things. And what the author is doing here, the psalmist, is he's recounting Israel's history. He's going back to the time when the nation of Israel was enslaved to the Egyptian empire. And for 400 years, the Israelites suffered. They were slaves. They worked 24/7. They were brutally treated, and yet God had not forgotten about them. God had not given up on his people. God had remembered his people and was going to be faithful to his promise to them. That he would give them a land, the promised land that we hear about. He would give them a specific land that they would be able to enjoy on this earth. And so in these verses, what the psalmist is doing, he's saying, hey, do you remember these times in our lives where we were slaves? But then God came in and he started to defeat Pharaoh, and he defeated the Egyptian army, and he led us out of Egypt, and he showed us his power when he divided the Red Sea, and Moses and the people of Israel walked through it, and then the Egyptian army was swallowed up in it. Hey, do you remember when we were in the wilderness for 40 years? Wandering around, God provided for us every single day with food and drink, and he never stopped being faithful. He said, do you remember those things? But do you also remember our ancestors, the ones that consistently were faithful? Because don't get me wrong, you look through the book of Exodus and you see how many Israelites wanted nothing to do with God. They grumbled, they were frustrated, they got angry with God. They're like, God, why are you doing this? But there were many Israelites who chose to remain faithful, who chose to trust God even when the circumstances were overwhelming. Even when they felt alone for 400 years, the people of Israel still had a faith in God. How strong was it? We don't necessarily know, but it was present in many of their hearts and lives. See, there's a lot of times, and I understand, God gets all the credit. He deserves it all. I'm the first to say that. God, this is why we worship him. We sing songs of praise to him, not any human. God gets all the credit. But we can also recognize that there were people within the country of Israel that even though they fell short, they were faithful to God. They were obedient to him. They trusted him. They were willing. When the firstborn in Egypt was taken away, was killed, they were the ones that said, hey, we're going to put this blood of the lamb on our doorposts, believing what God has to say, that he will protect us by doing this act of obedience. There were people who were faithful throughout Israel's history. And so what the psalmist is doing here is saying, hey, when you're not feeling that his love endures forever, think about all of your ancestors before. How they chose to be faithful to God, even when the circumstances around them maybe made it seem like God wasn't present. Even though God was, and even though he was working, sometimes we get tunnel vision, and sometimes we lose the perspective of how God's working. And yet, even in those moments, we can choose to be faithful. We can choose to obey. And kind of going back to a wedding, there's the first day you get married and the feelings of love are present. and you're saying these vows and you're choosing to sacrifice and to be selfless and to love your spouse for the rest of your life. But I don't know about your marriage, but my marriage to my wife, Maria, there's days where I feel like I love her, and and then the same day, I have to choose to love her because I'm a little irritated or frustrated, or we get in a little argument. I don't know about your marriage, but that's just my marriage. Even sometimes, I'll tell you a little secret, there's times that in the same conversation, within the same minute, I feel love towards her, and then I'm a little irritated towards her or frustrated with how things are going. And that's not because she's doing anything wrong. It's because I got some sin issues I got to work on. There's some things I got to work on in my heart, and I'm sure she would say the same thing, that the feeling of love doesn't always come naturally, but there's a choice to love. There's a choice to be faithful. And even if there's not always a feeling of love like there was on day one of our marriage, there still is a desire to choose to love. And when we consistently choose to love, to be faithful to one another, even in the hard times, even in difficult conversations, even in the arguments that we have, there's still a desire saying, hey, I'm going to choose to be faithful. And even if the feelings aren't there at this moment, my decision to move forward, to pursue you, to love you, to care for you, to show you love in ways I know that make you feel loved the most, the feelings are going to come. It might take a little time to get them going, to have them catch up to the choices that are making. But those that have been married for years and years and years, you understand this. Or those that have kids, or you're a guardian to a kid, grandparents, whatever it is. There's days you don't really feel that type of love to those in your family, but you make a consistent choice to love them. And the same way, we can choose to love God, to be obedient to him, to be faithful to him. But we don't do it just because, we're supposed to do it. We do it also because, we'll see in these last verses, we choose to be faithful because he's faithful. Ultimately, this is all about God's faithfulness to his people, that we get it wrong sometimes, but God never gets it wrong. He's always faithful. He never breaks his promises. His love endures forever for us, even when we want nothing to do with it. And so in these last verses, the psalmist reminds us of that truth, that he is faithful. So look with me here in verse 17. To him who struck down great kings, his love endures forever, and he killed mighty kings. His love endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, his love endures forever. And Og, king of Bashan, his love endures forever. And he gave their land as an inheritance. His love endures forever. An inheritance to his servant Israel. His love endures forever. He remembered us in our low estate. His love endures forever. And he freed us from our enemies. His love endures forever. He gives food to every creature. His love endures forever. And so not only had the psalmist looked back on Israel's history, but in those moments, he was recounting how God had recently been faithful to the people of Israel. That they were smaller in number compared to many other nations that were surrounding them, and yet time and time again, they were able to defeat enemy after enemy after enemy and inherit the promised land that they were in at that moment. And this was an inheritance to his servant Israel, as it says there in verse 22. This is not something that Israel deserved. It was something that Israel got because of their relationship with God. Just like when we have a patriarch or a matriarch in our family pass away, they leave an inheritance to the next generation. Well, that next generation didn't do anything to deserve it. It's just because they're a son or a daughter that they receive it. Now, I know that doesn't happen all the time. We're going to take that out of the equation just for a second. But generally speaking, that inheritance is just received. Why? Because they're part of the family. In the same way, Israel, even though they were faithful sometimes and they fell short sometimes, they weren't perfect, they didn't deserve it, and yet God graciously gave it to them. Why? Well, because he had said long, long time ago that he would provide them with a land. He would bless them and make them a people. And through these people, they would be a blessing to the whole world, who we end up seeing is through Jesus Christ, who is Jewish, from Israel descent, and allows all of us to experience the blessing from God of being in a forever and perfect relationship with him. See, God is faithful. And because he's faithful, we can choose to be faithful to him. And so even though we may not always feel that his love is enduring forever. We can go back in our lives, or we can even look at these past couple years, or we can go home today and we can see, oh God, this is how you've been faithful to me. God, this is how you have come through in this situation. God, when I was feeling alone and hurt because that person hurt me, I was deceived because someone did something I didn't know, whatever it is, but God, yet you stayed with me. You were present with me. You were helping me through it all. See, God's love for us, it endures forever. It goes on, and he's proved that by being faithful to us, by being present with us, and by creating us and being in charge of everything. And so this morning, we can choose to be thankful, and we can choose to be faithful to God. But it doesn't just stop there in our relationship with God. This love that we receive and experience from God, we are called to allow it to come out of the overflow of our heart into the lives of others. Jesus says in Matthew 22 that the greatest commandments are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. To the love that we receive and experience from God, where sometimes we feel it, sometimes we don't always, we are called then to let that love show into the lives of others. So as we move into a time of communion, a time of reflection where we remember what Jesus has done for us on the cross, there's two questions I want you to think about this morning. First one is this, is that what choice can I make to love God? What choice can I make to love God? And the second is, what choice can I make to love others? What choice can I make to love God? And what choice can I make to love others? They're very simple questions. But sometimes when it comes back to love, we got to get back to the basics. And so when it comes to loving God, what's the choice that you need to make in your life today? Maybe there's a part of your life where you know you're just being disobedient. You know his word and you're like, I'm going to do things my own way still. And you feel that tension in your heart and in your soul, that tug of war going on with God and his spirit within. Maybe you just need to confess that this morning. Ask him for forgiveness, believing that his death and his resurrection allows you to have that forever relationship with him, as well as forgiveness for what you have done. He's ready to forgive because his love endures forever. Maybe it's the choice to surrender more of your time to him, to your talent, your treasure, whatever it is. Maybe there's areas of your life where you're just kind of holding on to and saying, no, God, I don't want to give that to you. And he's saying, no. It's time for you to trust me and believe that what I have for your life is best. And I think about Laura up here sharing her story. I'm sure it was hard for her parents to say, you want to be a missionary? Like you're gonna go overseas? You're gonna move away from us for a long time? And I mean, we love that you love Jesus. Like that's a good thing, and you're a great kid. But I don't know about that one. That seems like too much. I think there's different areas of our lives where we do that I do that we all do that. Where we say, God, I'll give you like 80%, but that last 20%, I'm not sure. So there's an area of your life that you say, hey, God, I've tried to be in charge, and I need to trust you and give that to you and take that step forward to say, hey, God, because I love you, I'm going to obey you. Or what choice can I make to love others? Is there a relationship that needs mending? Is there a relationship that's broken that you need to take that first step to reach out and maybe say you're sorry, ask for forgiveness, or pursue a path to reconciliation, to talk with that person? Or maybe there's just a neighbor or a coworker that you just always just can't get along with. Do you need to pursue kindness with them? Or maybe there's a relationship within your home and your marriage where you just feel disconnected. Is there something that you need to do there to show love to that person, even if maybe you're not feeling love from them in the same way? I'm always reminded of this when I do premarital counseling with couples. It's this quote, the grass isn't greener, or the grass isn't green on the other side. It's greener where you water it, right? That concept, that picture of a lot of times, I see I have this connection with this person, and that feels more reciprocal, but a lot of times the growth that can happen in someone that you love is dependent sometimes on how you love that person. I want my kid to be different. Well, then I need to start by lovingly correcting them and helping out and sacrificing and selflessly caring for them. I want my wife or my husband to do this for me or to show more love or appreciate me more. Well, then I need to take the first step of appreciating them and loving them and caring for them and not just holding on to past arguments or being bitter towards them. The grass is going to be greener where you water it. The relationship is going to flourish where you show love consistently in the same way that God has shown love to us. So the worship team is going to come out. We're going to play some music right now and just give you this opportunity to reflect. And maybe ask God for forgiveness. And maybe something God's laying on your heart. Maybe just one of those questions. God's really tugging on your heart this morning. Someone that you need to love or a way that you need to love God. And whatever it is, just allow God to speak to you in this moment. The thoughts that you're thinking right now, God hears these thoughts. Have a conversation with him. We'll give you a couple minutes just to reflect and to think and think about these two questions, and then I'll lead us in taking communion together. The communion elements are right there in the seat backs in front of you. There's a cracker on the top and juice on the bottom that represents Jesus' body broken and his blood shed. And so go ahead, take this time now, reflect for a few minutes, and then I'll lead us in taking communion together. On the night that Jesus was betrayed and began the steps that led him to the cross to take the punishment for my sins and your sins and the sins of the world, he was in the garden and he was praying to the Father. He's saying, hey, can you take this cup from me? I don't want to have to suffer. I don't want to have to go through what I'm about to go through. I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want to have to lovingly give my life up on the cross. I think Jesus in that moment maybe wasn't feeling the things of love and compassion to a world that was rejecting him and was about to turn their back on him. And yet in that moment, he still said, Father, not my will, but yours be done. When it comes to loving God, sometimes we have to confess, hey, not my will, not my desires, not my feelings right now, but yours be done. And I'm thankful that Jesus did that for us. I'm grateful that God initiated this wonderful, majestic, powerful plan to redeem people broken like me and like you so that we could be restored and made perfect someday. And so let us take this bread that reminds us of what God did for us through Jesus, that his body was broken on the cross for us. Also take the cup, the juice. That is a visible reminder of his blood that was shed on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you. Thank you for loving us forever, for never giving up on us. Lord, today, would you help us to make the choice to love you and the choice to love others, but not only today, later this week and throughout just the rest of our lives, God, would you remind us that it is a choice that we can make to love others because you chose to love us first. Thank you, Jesus. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen. Amen. Would you stand with us as we sing and close out?